sure his will is...
Hello! Welcome to Forest Lawn Cemetery. We're here with the subject of this entire treatise, Rachel Emily Budd. Rachel Emily Budd was the daughter of John Moses Budd and Eliza Jane Sparks. So here at Forest Lawn with Emily Hacker, let's have a beer with Rachel Emily Budd. The beautiful Forest Lawn Cemetery. The first Forest Lawn Cemetery. I know that because my cousin Dominic told me that. We have a couple of subjects here to share a beer with Rachel Emily Budd today.
Nephew.
I was just corrected for the first time in my video history. My nephew Dominic. This will take some editing. Anyway, here we are with Rachel Emily Budd. Rachel Emily Budd came from a big family. John Moses Budd had 15 kids, eventually. Ain't that something? I can't name them all, I'm not even going to try. But here's a salient point. Rachel Emily Budd, the daughter of John Moses Budd and Eliza Jane Sparks. Eliza Jane Sparks dies in 1865. John Moses Budd, having known the Dallas family, which is just a couple of blocks away, ends up moving south to St. Clair County in Missouri, where he marries Sarah Ann Dallas. Sarah Ann, as Rachel Emily Budd called her, because she wasn't very fond of her. So, Rachel Emily Budd, born in 1850, yes, 1850, dies in 1937. Rachel Emily Budd was born in Linton Township, Vigo County, Indiana. Moves with a family to near Mandeville in Carroll County, Missouri. They live there till a little after 1860 when things are getting a little dicey with the whole Civil War issue. So John Moses Budd moves the family to Putnam County, Missouri. It's north by the Iowa County line. They live there for about 4 years before Eliza Jane Sparks dies. What's really important in all of this is in these moves to Carroll County, then Putnam County, and eventually to St. Clair County, where she ends up, where John Moses Budd marries Sarah Ann. Rachel Emily Budd has gone to move in with Aunt Ruth. Let me see where I am here. Any help?
Well, she moves in with Aunt Ruth because she didn't want to go live with Sarah Ann Dallas.
Well, she hated her.
Right. And so then what happens is she lives with them, and eventually she meets James Newton Cameron.
James Newton Cameron. Well, how did the Budds know the Camerons? Kind of what I was into before I lost my train of thought. The Camerons moved with the Budds to Carroll County, then up to Putnam County. But at the end of the Civil War, Peter Cameron moves to Sugar Creek, Kansas, Miami County, where he bought land July 5th, 1865. Rachel Emily Budd marries James Newton Cameron in 1870 in the old brick church in Osceola, Missouri. They go to live on the Cameron farm. Well, actually, the census states that they're on the land or the house directly next to the Peter Cameron home, and they're farming there in 1870. But the fact of the matter is the land went to pot. There was a drought in 1870, and so James Newton Cameron and Rachel Emily Budd moved to Parsons, Kansas. James Newton Cameron dies of appendicitis at age 25. Rachel Emily Budd marries Allen B. Hacker a year later in 1876. And they have the following children: Nora Dell Hacker, known as Aunt Node, Granville Hacker, called Grant, and Charles Lauren Hacker. They all move out here in 1920, around 1920, because Daisy Cameron has gotten pregnant. And in those days, it wasn't a thing you did in public.
Did you remember to mention Minnie Gertrude?
Now you see why I usually do this solo. No, I really like having these people here. These people. Sister Jill, nephew Dominic. So, let's see where I can pick up the story. So she's now remarried to Alan Hacker in Parsons, Kansas. He was an attorney. I don't know what firm he worked for. I couldn't find that in the Parsons paper in 1875, and I looked through the entire year. So she lives with Alan Hacker, who dies around 1920. It's around the time that Daisy Cameron gets pregnant, and then they all move out en masse here. That was the migration from Parsons to California, which is why we're all here. So they lived out their lives here. Daisy was a Republican. Emily was independent. Charles Loren was a Democrat. And that's about the only political affiliations I know. They live out their life here, and Emily Budd dies in 1937. If it wasn't for Emily Budd and our wonderful pioneer history, we wouldn't be here. But thanks to the Budd Camerons, we get to raise a glass to Rachel Emily Budd.
Take me to cocktail bars, I'm always blue. And when we play gin rummy well, that's nothing new. I dream of a certain place, an open space, where no one says